Today, as you're watching this, a single piece of technology, the most advanced microchip, dictates more geopolitical power than oil ever did in the last century. Think about that for a moment. Not vast oil fields, but microscopic silicon wafers. We're not just talking about who builds the fastest AI or the most sophisticated smartphones, we're talking about who controls the very bedrock of our digital world. This isn't a theory from a dusty history book, it's the defining struggle of our time, quietly unfolding in labs and boardrooms across the globe, a silent war that's reshaping economies and alliances right before our eyes.
And action.
We're here to unravel the complex, often hidden story of what many are calling the new Cold War, the escalating tech and trade battle between the United States and China. This isn't about conventional armies clashing, but about economic muscle, technological supremacy, and the fight for global influence in a hyper-connected world. We'll dive deep into how this rivalry started, the surprising ways it's playing out in 2025, and why its outcome will profoundly affect your life, your wallet, and the future of global power. We'll expose the real stakes, challenge some common assumptions about who's winning, and reveal a truth about this conflict that most headlines completely miss. The roots of this modern clash aren't just in trade imbalances or currency manipulation, they're deeply embedded in a clash of economic philosophies and national ambitions that trace back decades but truly accelerated in the early 2000s. China, after its entry into the World Trade Organization in 2001, embarked on an unprecedented economic ascent fueled by massive foreign investment, state-backed industrial policies, and, controversially, a rapid assimilation of foreign technology, often through forced transfers or outright intellectual property theft, as alleged by numerous U.S. government reports and corporate complaints. The United States, initially welcoming China's integration into the global economy, began to view Beijing's rise with growing apprehension as its technological capabilities advanced from manufacturing basic goods to competing in high-tech sectors like artificial intelligence, 5G, and semiconductors. The turning point arrived with China's Made in China 2025 initiative, unveiled in 2015, which explicitly aimed for self-sufficiency and global dominance in 10 key high-tech industries. This ambitious plan signaled a clear intent to move beyond being the world's factory to becoming its primary innovator and technological leader, directly challenging America's long-held technological supremacy. The United States' response, initially slow, intensified dramatically from 2018 onwards, evolving from targeted tariffs on steel and aluminum to broad restrictions on Chinese tech giants like Huawei and ZTE, citing national security concerns. By 2025, these measures have broadened to include sweeping export controls on advanced semiconductors and chip-making equipment, effectively attempting to hobble China's progress in critical technological areas, forcing Beijing to double down on indigenous innovation. What started as a commercial disagreement has metastasized into a comprehensive geopolitical contest, where economic interdependence is now viewed through the prism of national security. One of the most profound battlegrounds in this new Cold War is the semiconductor industry, a sector often overlooked by the general public but utterly indispensable to modern life. Every smartphone, laptop, car, missile, and AI system relies on these tiny, complex components. As of 2025, the United States, through its allies like the Netherlands, ASML for lithography equipment, and Taiwan, TSMC for advanced manufacturing, maintains a critical chokehold on the most cutting-edge chip technology. China, despite massive state investment, still lags significantly in manufacturing the most advanced chips, specifically those smaller than 7 nanometers. This technological gap is not merely an inconvenience for Beijing, it's a strategic vulnerability. The United States has leveraged this vulnerability through stringent export controls, prohibiting American companies and any foreign companies using American technology from selling advanced chips or chip-making equipment to certain Chinese entities without a license. This move, initiated aggressively in 2022 and tightened in 2024, aims to slow China's military modernization and its advancements in artificial intelligence and quantum computing, areas heavily dependent on high-performance chips. Beijing's response has been multifaceted, pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into its domestic semiconductor industry, building new fabs, and accelerating research into alternative chip architectures and manufacturing processes. However, scaling up this industry is incredibly difficult and time-consuming, requiring highly specialized knowledge, equipment, and a global supply chain. The controversial opinion here is that the U.S. strategy, while effective in the short term at slowing China's high-end chip development, might inadvertently accelerate China's long-term self-sufficiency. By denying China access to the best technology, the U.S. is creating an unprecedented incentive for Beijing to overcome its limitations, potentially leading to a fully independent, albeit initially less efficient, Chinese semiconductor ecosystem within the next decade. Some experts argue that this forced decoupling could, in the long run, fragment the global tech industry into two distinct and potentially incompatible ecosystems, raising costs and reducing innovation for everyone, including the US and its allies. The question isn't if China will eventually catch up, but how fast and at what cost to the global economy. This semiconductor struggle is not just about microchips, it's about micro-supremacy, a struggle for control over the digital infrastructure that underpins all future power. Beyond semiconductors, the tech and trade battle is manifesting in other critical sectors. The race for 5G supremacy, which intensified significantly in the late 2000s and early 2020s, was arguably the opening salvo of this new Cold War. The race for 5G supremacy, which intensified significantly in the late 2000s and early 2020s, was arguably the opening salvo of this new Cold War. The US and its allies aggressively pushed back against Huawei, citing national security risks, ultimately sidelining the Chinese telecom giant from many Western 5G networks. This forced many countries to choose between Chinese and Western-aligned technology, fundamentally altering the global telecom landscape. In 2025, the focus has shifted to AI, or artificial intelligence, and quantum computing, areas where both nations are pouring immense resources. The US fears that China's vast datasets, coupled with its state-backed research, could give it an insurmountable lead in AI, particularly in areas with military applications. Similarly, the electric vehicle market has become a new front. China dominates EV battery production and is rapidly expanding its EV manufacturing capabilities, with Chinese brands aggressively entering global markets, including Europe and Latin America. The United States has responded with subsidies for domestically produced EVs and has signaled potential tariffs on Chinese EV imports, fearing a similar displacement of its own auto industry as seen with earlier manufacturing sectors. The rare earth mineral supply chain, crucial for many high-tech industries and green technologies, also remains a point of contention. China controls a significant portion of global rare earth processing, giving it potential leverage. The United States and its allies are actively working to diversify their supply chains, investing in new mining and processing facilities outside of China. It's a slow and costly endeavor. This widespread fragmentation across multiple industries underscores a controversial perspective, that this new Cold War is not just about who builds the best tech, but about who controls the entire global supply chain. The belief that globalization was inherently beneficial and would lead to political convergence now faces a stark reality. Economic interdependence can be weaponized. The U.S. strategy of de-risking or friendshoring aims to reduce reliance on China, not just for security reasons, but to reshape the fundamental architecture of global trade. However, this carries the inherent risk of creating a less efficient and more inflationary global economy, forcing companies to make costly choices and potentially slowing technological progress in the long run. The economic implications of this tech and trade battle are profound and far-reaching, affecting everything from global inflation to the cost of your next smartphone. The economic implications of this tech and trade battle are profound and far-reaching, affecting everything from global inflation to the cost of your next smartphone. As of 2025, we're seeing a clear trend toward supply chain diversification and regionalization. Companies that once heavily relied on China for manufacturing are now actively exploring Vietnam, India, Mexico, and other countries as alternatives. This shift, while reducing geopolitical risk for some, often comes with higher production costs, which can translate into higher prices for consumers globally. The WTO, once the arbiter of global trade disputes, finds itself increasingly sidelined and ineffective as both nations prioritize national security and strategic competition over free trade principles. This erosion of global trade norms could lead to a more fragmented and less predictable international trading system. Furthermore, there's a growing push for digital sovereignty, where countries seek to control their own data flows, internet infrastructure, and technological standards, often reflecting geopolitical alliances. This could lead to a splinternet, where different regions operate on distinct technological stacks, making cross-border data transfer and technological compatibility more complex and expensive. The financial markets are also feeling the tremors. Investment flows between the United States and China have significantly cooled, particularly in sensitive tech sectors, as both governments scrutinize foreign investments for national security implications. Scene 8. Challenging environment. This creates a challenging environment for venture capitalists and multinational corporations, who once saw China as an indispensable growth market. Scene 9. Provocative argument. A provocative argument to consider is that while both sides frame this as a defensive necessity, the relentless pursuit of technological and economic decoupling could paradoxically lead to less global stability. Economic integration, despite its flaws, often acted as a deterrent to major conflict. Scene 10. Incentives for peaceful resolution. As the economic ties fray, the incentives for peaceful resolution of disputes might diminish, potentially increasing the risk of miscalculation or escalation. The world is being forced to choose sides, not just ideologically but technologically and economically, fundamentally altering the fabric of global cooperation. The narrative of inevitable globalization is giving way to a new reality of strategic competition, where economic strength is the primary currency of geopolitical power. In conclusion, the tech and trade battle between the United States and China is not just a policy debate happening in distant capitals, it's a fundamental reshaping of the 21st century global order that affects us all. In conclusion, the tech and trade battle between the United States and China is not just a policy debate happening in distant capitals, it's a fundamental reshaping of the 21st century global order that affects us all. From the semiconductors in our devices to the future of our digital infrastructure and the cost of everyday goods, the choices made in Washington and Beijing today will reverberate for decades. The world is witnessing a new kind of Cold War, fought not with tanks and missiles but with microchips, data, and economic leverage. Will this strategic decoupling lead to a more secure future or a more fragmented and volatile one? Will China's forced self-reliance ultimately make it stronger, or will it create insurmountable hurdles? The answers to these questions are still unfolding, and understanding this complex dance of power, technology, and economics is crucial for navigating the world we live in. This isn't just history in the making, it's the future being forged, and we invite you to continue exploring these critical narratives with us. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay informed and join the conversation on the most impactful stories shaping our world.